How could we prove it false that there's a teapot going around one of the moons of Saturn? And it's true until we prove that false. It sounds like what you originally said.
Yeah, we'd have to have observance of all of the corners of the moon at the same time
Right.
to be able to prove definitively that it is true that there is no teapot
Right. And since we
orbiting.
can't prove it false, that doesn't necessarily make it true.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. All right.
That was fun.
Anything else you want to say about
That
truth?
was fun. That was good.
So what is your definition for truth now? Oh no! I'm glad that you
I
stopped.
saw you earlier and I thought it was fun.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we've had a few good conversations so far. Yeah, my name is David.
Hi, I'm Dava. It's from David.
Dava?
Yeah.
Spell that?
D-A-V-A.
D-A-V-A.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. My dad's name is David.
Oh, okay. Well, that explains it.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'll explain what I'm doing. Basically interviewing people in different communities about something that you think is true.
Okay.
Something that's meaningful to you. Something that if you found out tomorrow it was not true, your behavior would change.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
And we can do it a couple different ways. 'Cause I like to experiment. There's a way where I do it where you don't tell me what the belief is. That way I can focus on questions that help us explore how you got there and helps us explore the quality of the reasons that you use to support your confidence that it's true. And that way I stay more neutral. Because if I don't know what the belief is,
Yeah.
I can't really inject my own bias in the questioning part. We can do it that way. It's up to you. You can tell me what it is. We can do it where you want to talk about a problem that society that we have, and you're convinced that you have the solution to it. And I'll ask questions that involve how you know your solution is a good one.
Sure.
So we can go that route. We can talk about what your idea of truth is. Because that's kind of deep, right? Like, if we're not on the same page as far as what truth means, it doesn't really make sense to explore a claim.
Yeah. I think it's important to start there, but
Yeah.
option one is probably a good place too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So do you have something that's important to you, something that you think is true about the world that we share, that you want to explore with me asking you questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dava. I'm gonna get a different pen because this one's not working. What did you wanna share?
Well, so I have two options, but I feel like my most basic one is a good idea. So my thesis that I just ended up talking about was about vaccine hesitancy, which is interesting because there are a lot of people labeled as anti-vax rhetorics, misinformation sharers, quote unquote, that I would relabel as non-traditional sources of information, because a lot of them have good intentions and it's very fear-based.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, I kind of would rather talk about God.
Okay.
That seems like the most basic one.
Whiplash.
Well, because I sat here and I was like, I'm in the vaccine hesitancy mode, but now I'm like, because I believe in God, so I feel like that's, but I mean, different people have different interpretations of what God is. People have different interpretations of, but I do like starting with what is true or what is truth.
Okay.
Too.
Real quick, does your God belief influence your position on vaccines?
No, I don't think it does, especially because my thesis was specifically about researching what other people said about vaccination. So I tried to be very non-biased in my belief. I work at a summer camp for children with autism.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
I walked across campus today to go get a Dasani water bottle because there was a parent that came up to me that said they wanted their kid to only drink bottled Dasani water
That
all
brand?
week. Yes.
Oh,
Because
okay.
they believe that it was fluoride from the water that caused their child's autism.
Interesting.
Yes. And that's just a kind of silly example, because really most people can agree that it would be true that, water with a little bit of salt in it probably doesn't cause autism. But the fluoride thing is, a whole other big can of worms. And
Yeah.
we don't have to get in the nitty gritty about the can of worms of vaccines and autism, even though God seems a lot bigger of a topic. It seems simpler to me somehow today.
Okay.
So,
It sounds like, or I suspect, that the God belief affects your behavior more than your view on
certain
vaccines and
topics.
autism.
Yeah, certain, like all topics. But
Okay.
there's a quote by C.S. Lewis that I think comments on what you were talking about, that says that I believe in Christianity specifically, not because it's how like I see the world, but because it's a lens through which I see everything in the world. Or like, so
It kind of supports everything.
yeah. There's a book titled "I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist,"
Uh-huh.
which I've read, which I have subscribed to and kind of enjoyed, which is, like, you have to have enough reasons for the truth of one thing, which is, maybe the truth of atheism, but you also have enough reasons to support maybe another ideology like Christianity.
Uh-huh.
And you have to have faith for both, because theoretically, like you were talking, I mean, you didn't even mention it about what is truth. If you were to go to the nihilism route or the philosophically kind of null route, then you could think that truth is, nothing. We don't actually exist. We're in a simulation, and everything I'm thinking is predetermined. Or
Okay.
sorry, lots of things.
There's a lot there.
And I know you're probably gonna try and go simply, because if we're talking about truth, but I don't know.
Maybe.
We kind of went everywhere.
I guess more in the direction of what influences your behavior the most. Like,
Sure.
So for instance, I kind of want to ask about faith and what you mean by it.
Sure.
But I think I want to start with, okay, so if somebody says a statement is true,
Mm-hmm.
how do you interpret that? Like, what's your idea of what truth is in that context? Like, what's your criteria for something to be true?
My answer might be a little more artistic than you expect, because I think it's important philosophically to like get down to the premise, right? But I just wrote a little poem for my thesis that was basically commenting on the self-proclaimed conspiracy theorist and their mindset. So the question that they might ask themselves is like, how could you really know? Because, for instance, there's a study about Tuskegee African American women or African American men who went through a syphilis study. They were under the impression that they were going to be cured of syphilis, but really they were just being studied to die of syphilis. So what was true in that sense is that they thought they were being, the terms changed. They didn't know what really was true in the moment. And so I often ask myself, like, how could I really know? You know, especially when facts seem to change all the time. Um, but so that's my underlying disclaimer. And then on top of that is, but, you know, I generally trust, you know, scientific studies that have been peer reviewed. So multiple have seen the same occurrence happen. Multiple people have seen saying the same thing happen. Um,
So
maybe it's something.
truth
Truth.
truth is a peer-reviewed study.
It's like truth exists unless it's disproven. So if something has been existing for a long time, maybe, or lots of people have observed it being true, like for instance, like we're standing on the ground and someone hasn't just fallen through it yet. Once someone does, it rocks your world. So how could I ever know that someone might not fall through the ground philosophically, but because people haven't, I'm expecting that to be true.
Okay. Would you say something is true until it is proven false?
Yeah. Which makes it difficult to say that truth is fact. It's more of like a belief sometimes. Like, I believe this to be true because it hasn't not been true, but that doesn't mean it's impossible to
Would
not
you
be
agree
true.
that a statement is either true or not true?
I'm not sure. I don't think there's a middle because I can't think of one.
Okay. Okay. I want to ask about that. Something's true until it's proven false. Um, are there some things that we cannot prove are false that you think are not true?
Are there some things that we
I
cannot
have an
prove?
example, if that
Sure, that would
helps.
help.
Um, let's say somebody just left this bench that was that believed in a different God
Yeah,
than you do,
yeah.
uh, and they think that that's true, that God being real is true. Would you would you say that we can prove that false, that their God is not real,
Um,
or that their God is real?
it is difficult to prove in the negative, and because where I come from with my belief system is that there have been, as far as I have read and everything, a lot of prophecies that have come true, and statistically, but that's where the I don't have enough faith to be an atheist comes from.
Uh-huh.
If there are so many proven prophecies true, then, you know, the statistical significance of it being false goes lower and lower and lower. And so it would be difficult for me to prove that another religion was false unless the, you know, Jesus, for example, but like came and said, I am God if I do this, and then cannot proceed to do this.
Okay.
But
So we haven't proven that their God, other God, is false. So it sounds like, from your perspective, that belief is true because we haven't proven it false.
it's hard to go from nothing to something. So it's right that's like truth does. So I guess truth doesn't exist to be true unless it's proven false. But maybe there's a limbo. Like, we don't know what's true, but we know things could be proven false.
Okay. So are you now saying that just because we can't prove it false doesn't mean that it's true?
Just because we can't prove it false. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So you need to have evidence and support for your beliefs in order to prove it true. And there are many things about maybe our world that we assume to be true that could be proven false, but haven't been.
Hmm.
It's like
Okay.
the skeptic's perspective, maybe.
Right.
You know, maybe we can fall through the floor, but I don't, you know, there's reason to believe that we won't.
Okay. So just so we're clear, you first said um, truth, something is true until it's proven false, and now you're saying um, it could be false even if we can't prove that it's false.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the first statement needed a caveat
Okay.
of not everything is truth. And it's actually very difficult to find out what is truth because it has the threat of being proven false almost continuously.
Yeah. How could we prove it false that there's a teapot going around one of the moons of Saturn? And it's true until we prove that false. It sounds like what you originally said.
Yeah, we'd have to have observance of all of the corners of the moon at the same time
Right.
to be able to prove definitively that it is true that there is no teapot.
Right. And since we
Orbiting.
can't prove it false, that doesn't necessarily make it true.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. All right.
That was fun.
Anything else you want to say about
That
truth?
was fun. That was good.
So what is your definition for truth now?
I mean, something that, I mean, the caveat was that it could continuously be proven false if, so in philosophy you have premises, and all premises have to be verifiably quote unquote true, but you can always come in and add a third premise that disproves the second one. And so even if you have a logical argument where all premises are correct, flow logically, and are true based on your knowledge, and the conclusion follows, if you come in with a third premise that nobody ever expected, then I think it'd be wise to say that I think it's Descartes that said that you can have reasonable belief, but it's difficult to have facts or truth.
Okay.
So, I mean, I could say I have a reasonable belief that Jesus walked the earth because I'm a Christian, and I can have a reasonable belief that we ought to act a certain way because it works a lot of the time, and that the Bible had a lot of prophecies that came true and hasn't not come true, but that's a reasonable belief. And should someone come in with a third premise that is backwards, then so yeah, I guess to make it more difficult on you, like I don't see anything as verifiably truth, but I think the only thing that's required as far as my faith is to have belief.
Okay. Now we're back to faith, which is interesting to me. You said that you don't have enough faith to be an atheist. What's the definition of faith in that context?
I guess reasonable belief would be a good definition for it.
Reasonable belief. Okay.
So you have to have reason, which I think would make a lot of people who want to think logically and premise by premise
Okay.
happy.
So if I have reasonable belief in something, that means that I have faith in it?
I think so.
Okay. Do you support your God belief with reasonable belief,
I
aka
think so.
faith?
I think so.
Okay. Could someone use faith to support a belief that is not true?
Yes, if they had, premises that followed 1, 2, 3, and they all were true as far as they saw it in their, chamber of existence,
Uh-huh.
and they all followed, and they followed to a conclusion, and, I'm not trying to be too evangelical, but a lot of Christians will say that, they want to be the third premise to try and like convince them to their side,
Uh-huh.
but that doesn't necessarily mean that their reasonable belief or truth is wrong based on what they have understood to be true. Understood to be true doesn't mean that it is true. Same with Christianity. Doesn't mean that Christianity is true.
Somebody could be convinced that something is true, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's true.
Yeah.
Just being convinced doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah.
Okay. So if someone could have faith in atheism,
Yeah.
and I suspect you think atheism is false, and we're just kind of using your words and definitions
Yeah.
here, what does that say about the reliability of faith?
It's not necessarily reliable because anybody could have faith in anything. I think what's reliable is the merit of the premises that they're making
Okay.
and the conclusion that follows from their premises.
Okay. Yet you use faith to support your God belief.
Yes, because I believe that my premises are true because I haven't been disproven.
Okay. How much of your God belief is supported by faith?
I think
Like if we had a pie chart?
Yeah. Well, faith is all that's necessarily required of my faith to say like I believe in Christianity, and the reason for that is that we called it like justifiable belief or reasonable belief.
Yeah.
So like I see faith as being closer to like just like I'm trying to get as close as I can to truth, but I'm too cautious to step my toe on truth at
Okay.
this moment. You know, because I can't really know, and I don't think I'm expected to know. I think I'm expected to have reasonable belief in my premises and conclusions.
Okay.
Does that answer your question or not?
I think so. You're saying that faith isn't necessarily a reliable way to get to truth,
I
but
think
you're not you're
I'm not expecting you to get to truth.
yeah, you're okay. Would you want to know?
Oh yeah.
You would want to know.
Oh yeah. I'd love to die. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. It would be very cool to know for certain, and I think it's part of the human condition to yearn for certain. To me, there's always the threat of the external third premise that might come in and push you to the side and prove, humble you and tell you weren't actually right.
Are you convinced that your God is real?
I'm convinced.
Okay. And you're using premises
Yes.
to support that?
Yes.
Okay. What would be the strongest reason that's supporting your being convinced that your God is real?
My
We're talking about the
grandfather.
Christian God?
Yeah,
Okay.
personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Strongest reason?
this is a silly reason. So I run a Christian summer camp for children with autism,
Uh-huh.
and one of the things that Christianity helps them with is to show that they're, valued for some reason, and someone created them with a purpose, even though they feel like they're broken because they have autism or whatever else.
Okay.
And there's so many people with autism with different talents and everything. And so my grandfather founded the camp, and he has this sermon that he goes out and he gets a radio. We have these radios we just like talk and communicate with for all the staff, and he puts it inside of a cardboard box and smashes it to pieces. He just like throws this radio all over the ground, and kids are like, what's happening? And then he puts it inside the box and shakes it and says, no matter how many times, mathematically, statistically, no matter how many times I shake this box, this radio is not going to just magically come back together. It doesn't matter, statistically how many times, the earth were to, or not the earth, but like, gases in the stars were to, like we're too intricate and perfect for science to fully explain how I'm thinking with emotions and have morality, debatably, ingrained upon me, and we're able to form relationships and stuff like that. And so, anyways, I guess creation would be number one, and just maybe the awe of creation would be inspiring to some people. But yeah, I don't have a full. But yeah.
Is your strongest reason
We exist, I guess, is premise one.
we exist? Okay.
Which can be totally refuted. But I don't believe the refutations. You know what I mean? Like that we exist in a simulation, but we're not actually here, or...
We could. Is it impossible for us to exist without a God?
No, it's not impossible for us to exist without a God. I think it's more reasonable to assume that there is a God.
Okay. 0 to 100, how confident are you that this God is real?
I'm like 90%, 99% confident that is truth.
99?
Yeah, but I don't think that I need to be that confident to have faith or a belief that something is true. Like,
yeah, you can believe something without being 100% confident. That's kind of what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And are you at 99 and not 100 because of the lack of expectation to be so certain?
Maybe I'm not 99, or I'm at 99 not 100 because I know that I'm influenced by Western society. I grew up with Christian grandparents. I don't have Christian parents, but I know that I'm influenced by things. So I'm also humbled by the fact that, there's someone equally as smart as I am or equally as put together as I am in a different culture or country that,
Uh-huh.
may have an answer that I don't have.
Yeah, like if you were born in India,
Yeah.
would you be believing in the same God?
Not unless, I grew up maybe at a missionary's house or something like that. It's
The
very
culture
unlikely.
would have you're humble enough to say that if you grew up in a different culture, that culture could also be as
Convincing.
influencing as our culture.
Yeah.
Okay.
But as far as if topic, like we're talking about the topic of Christianity, I guess I would say like we exist. It makes sense. There's a reason. And I guess it's part of the human condition too. But like I feel like there should be a reason when something exists, or there should be like something doesn't get created out of nothing very often, if not at all. So maybe because we are something, we should be created by something.
Okay.
Because right now, the Big Bang Theory, for example, is like boom. You know what I mean? Like gases and condensation, and then I don't know what the word. I didn't say that word right, but like, and then just explosion, and then it follows from there, which it totally does. But what came before that? Chicken or the egg, and it's hard for us to wrap our minds around nothingness. I feel like it makes sense to have a creator.
Right. Okay. How much does creation, existence, all of these things affect whether it's the Christian God or not, specifically? Like, couldn't somebody use these ideas to support the non-Christian God?
I believe in the Christian God because of biblical prophecy. That's why I believe in the Christian. Yeah, I believe that prophecy coming true is more than enough statistical proof or realistic proof for me to believe in a Christian God.
I was gonna get one when I went to Switzerland because you get like $1,000.
Say we were in a different culture and they had scripture
Mm-hmm.
that had prophecy in it that you were convinced, meted your criteria for fulfilled prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
Would you, what would that mean?
It would probably mean that I would need to endeavor further into their religion, to not necessarily to prove them wrong, but I wouldn't be opposed to exploring more into other religions.
Okay. Are you open to your religion being false?
I am open to my religion being false, but I haven't been told something that proves it false, or not even proves, but implies that it's false.
Now we're back to it's true until it's proven false.
Yeah, kind of, I think.
Okay, which it sounded like you changed your position on whether that.
I think you can still use, something is true until it's proven false, but I'm not admitting to having truth. I'm only admitting to having like reasonable belief.
Okay.
So you can't necessarily say something's true, but because you could come to me with a third premise and say that my premises did not lead to my conclusion.
Uh-huh.
So I do have reasonable belief in Christianity, but I won't admit to having found truth. You know what I mean?
Okay, gotcha. Is that kind of what is keeping you to go to 100?
Yeah,
Like
I don't think it'd be okay to say that I 100% know, because I think the definition of truth would mean 100% knowing. I don't think you can have truth with a caveat.
Do you have your syllogism? Like, do you have the premises and the conclusion?
I have it written out.
Oh,
I wish
I'd be interested.
it would be cool to share it with you or to have it.
What's one of the premises? Do you have that?
Well, I think we exist as a premise that
We exist.
that you can prove or disprove, and I think it would be reasonable to prove we exist to be, reasonably true, because the alternatives are, maybe we're in a simulation. There are tons of, philosophical writings about that, which people actually believe, but.
So we exist. That would be premise one, right? So far we're not at God
Mm-hmm.
yet.
Yeah.
Do you have another? Can you think of another premises?
Maybe and I haven't thought these through, but maybe the Bible exists in the way that it's written,
Okay.
like, or
We have the Bible?
we have the Bible. Yeah.
Like, I don't want to...
Yeah, no,
Put
no, no,
words in your
yeah.
mouth.
Simple is good.
Okay.
Or like prophecies exist, prophecies come true, which is kind of wrapped up in we have the Bible.
Prophecies exist. Okay. That'd be P2.
Mm-hmm.
Is this helpful, or because I don't want to come off like I'm
No, it is
saying that
helpful,
you don't have your...
But I also have another philosophical, it's called Pascal's wager, that maybe would be easier, because that's actually what convinced me. It wasn't
Pascal's
biblical
wager?
prophecy that necessarily convinced me, even though now that's why I think it's reasonable to conclude.
Okay, perfect. So quick question about
Yeah.
Pascal's wager. If you found out that Pascal's wager was not a sufficient reason to your own standards, where would you go from 99?
If it wasn't sufficient reason, then I would just look for more reasons. And I would still be at 99, because I'd say, oh, well, that's not a good premise, or that's not a good premise, let's look for another one. Does that make any sense?
So your confidence would remain even though what convinced you was found to be insufficient.
Well, I guess I couldn't start at a number then at the very beginning. Like, let's say I was just born and I didn't have any information to start with. Like, I wouldn't be 0, I wouldn't be 100, I would just not be a number. And so, if Pascal's wager was the only piece of evidence I found and it ended up being false, then I would have to be back in the void. I couldn't be at 99, I couldn't be at 10, I couldn't be at 100. But I guess I said 99 because I, do have background in maybe emotional reasons, maybe because my grandparents, maybe whenever I'm still looking for an answer.
And your camp, that the kids feel valued, and that can be. It sounds like you're saying could be an emotional reason for believing in the God.
Yeah.
Okay. So, because as far as Pascal's wager goes, if that was taken away and your confidence doesn't go down, it sounds like that's not a real reason that's supporting your confidence, right? Like, does that make sense? Like, if your confidence wouldn't shift, if that was taken away, then it doesn't sound like that's one of the supporting reasons.
I guess I really do think maybe it's why, like, depending on why it was taken away. Like, if Pascal's wager was true because someone came in and said, well, do you mind if I tell you Pascal's wager? Unless you know it.
Can I tell you what my understanding of it is?
Yes, absolutely.
I'd
love that.
Tell me
if
I'm correct about it. So, if I believe it, I gain everything. And I'm summarizing it.
Sure.
If I don't believe it, then I lose everything. And so it's like, why not just believe it just in case?
That is almost how I understand it. But there's basically 4 options instead of 2.
Okay.
So there's God exists or God doesn't exist. And then in the case that God does exist, if you believe in God and he exists, then you go to heaven. It's like positive infinity is the number we can put to it. Yeah. If God exists...
That's the gain everything part.
Yes. If God exists and you don't believe in him, then you lose negative infinity. But there's the question of, well, I'm gaining things right now being on earth. So then we go to, if God doesn't exist, and you don't believe in him, then you will have gained, like, let's say 0.3 happy points. Okay. Because you will have been able to live however you want. There's no constriction. There's no, religious services that you have to attend to or whatever.
Wasting time,
wasting energy.
Believing something that isn't true.
Yes. And then, and this is what's convinced me personally at the get-go, at the beginning of this journey I was on, is if God doesn't exist and you do believe in him, then you lose 0.3 happy points. You had to, conscribe to all these, you couldn't do all these quote-unquote sins that you may have been tempted to do or want to do. But what convinced me was that -3 is much less than negative infinity or positive infinity. So for me, if I'm thinking outer worldly about, the premise would have to exist too, is there an afterlife? Because if you're not concerned about the afterlife, then go with your negative 3.3, whatever. So anyways,
It's like a
Pascal's,
proportional
yeah,
the proportion of gain versus loss.
yeah. Which is more of like a statistical way to think about it, I guess.
Why is that a good reason to believe in the Christian God?
I have my reasons for believing in the Christian God because I have been shown prophecy that had come to be true, but I have never been shown, Buddhist prophecy. I haven't been shown maybe better reasons to believe in Buddhism, and I haven't been exposed to that. So that's why I'm still open to hearing anybody's perspective. But I have been given enough premises to come to a reasonable belief for my religion right now.
Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, you're using Pascal's wager to believe in a God, and then prophecy makes it more specific to the Christian God.
Yeah, the only caveat to that is I think there are other gods that don't threaten hell. You know what I mean? There are other gods that don't say that if you don't believe in God, there will be negative consequences. And so it does kind of constrict towards the Christian God, because the Christian God claims that if you have reasonable belief, you don't even have to know. But if you have reasonable belief, then you will be rewarded in the afterlife. Yeah.
So, do you have time?
I probably should get wrapped up,
Okay.
but I am enjoying this. I really am. It's fun.
Yeah, we can leave it there.
I'd like to see your work too.
Yeah, if you scan that QR code,
Sure.
it'll take you to the YouTube channel.
Great.
And then in the description, there's lots of other information too, like for other platforms and that kind of thing. Dava, that was great. Is there?
Good.
You are open to being incorrect about your belief. And what would it take? What would it take to lower your confidence?
Disproving my precedent or my premises.
Prescription?
Disproving, yeah. Yeah, disproving my premises, or like offering me a third one that
Prophecies exist.
that would change my conclusion.
Okay. Real quick, what's the strongest prophecy?
Well, I actually don't know a lot of them. I was researching circumcision, and I thought it was kind of interesting that the Bible recommended circumcision on the 8th day without any medical reasoning, just because God said so. And then following now modern day technology, we know that it's because the blood clotting mechanisms don't, form until that day. And I guess the strongest prophecy too is, all of the writings that Jesus will come, and then the writings about when he's here and what he did. And I know the math is complicated, but when I read in I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist that somebody went through the Bible and counted all of those prophecies, and then talked about the significance of all of them being wrong, and it was like a grain of sand in the ocean kind of significance. And that's one of the reasons that I've been given, which I thought was fairly cool. So
okay, how did you rule out coincidence with the prophecy of the circumcision?
Shaking a radio in a box.
Okay.
that maybe is not scientifically significant, but it makes sense to me. I was like, how many times am I going to shake this radio until it turns into a walking, talking human being?
Okay. Cool. Awesome. Well, this is normally whenever I see if you have any questions for me. I know you have to get going, so whatever time frame you're comfortable with.
Well, I think what you're doing is super fun, and I hope people are trying to not just go blindly into truths that maybe have no backing, because I'm not talking about religion necessarily, but
right.
Following truths that have bad reasoning can be dangerous in some ways or another. So getting people to be critical thinkers and really try and think about their truths, it's a cool endeavor. I like it a lot.
Cool.
It's really coming down.
thanks so much for
Yeah.
stopping.
Yeah.
Glad that you caught me right before I was packing up.
That
so.
was fun. What's your name again?
My name's David.
I got it. Okay.
Yep.
Can't forget that.
Should be easy to remember. All right.
Do you think my reasoning was fairly sound, or do you have problems with it personally?
We exist. Prophecy exists. I guess I would need more to get me to therefore God is real.
Yeah.
But maybe we can talk again.
Yeah,
I'd like to
are you
ask
on
you.
campus a lot?
Well, I'm on a U.S. tour.
Oh, fun.
We might, because I was bringing somebody else that's interested in doing this. They had to take off to go to work, so we might be here again this week. I don't know, but I would probably ask, like, what's your criteria for fulfilled prophecy? Maybe we
Sure.
could pick it up from there. Yeah. So
Yay.
that was great.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yep. Good luck.
Okay, David.
Thanks.